When you're setting up a small shop, or a serious hobby bench, the temptation to grab the first feeder you see online is strong, but the real question is whether that feeder will actually make your workflow smoother, or just add another piece of metal you have to wrestle with. I've spent the last few weeks looking at a handful of 1 horsepower, 4 roller power feeders, reading forum threads, watching a few build shop videos, and comparing what people say about the day-to-day experience. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What follows is a plainspoken look at the ShopFox W1768, so you can decide if it's the right fit for your space, your projects, and the budget you've set aside. First off, let's talk about why a power feeder matters at all. If you're feeding long boards, plywood sheets, or even a stack of rough lumber into a table saw, a manual push can quickly become a sore thumb, especially when the material is heavy or the cuts are repetitive. The core idea behind a feeder is to let a motor handle that forward pressure, keeping the workpiece moving at a steady, controllable rate while you focus on the cut. That sounds straightforward, but the devil is in the details: motor power, speed options, how the rollers engage, and how high you can raise the rollers to accommodate different thicknesses. The W1768 runs on a single-phase 1 horsepower motor, which on paper sounds like enough grunt for most light to medium shop tasks. In practice, the motor feels smooth when you first power it up. There's no harsh startup jerk that can send a board flying. The speed control is a simple dial that lets you pick between 3 increments. What's useful here is that you can dial down to a crawl when you're feeding a delicate panel that might chip, and then step up to a brisk pace when you're handling a stack of inch hardwood. The ability to adjust speed on the fly is something I've seen missing on cheaper models that only have a single fixed speed, and it saves a lot of time because you're not constantly stopping to change belts or gear ratios. Now, the rollers themselves are a bit of a mixed bag. There are 4 rubber-coated rollers that make contact with the board, and the design lets you raise the whole roller assembly up to about 2 inches. That maximum height is where the feeder shows its practicality. For most sheet goods, think inch plywood, MDF, or even a thick piece of melamine, the rollers can be set high enough to clear the top of the sheet while still gripping the lower face. However, if you regularly work with 1 inch or thicker stock, you'll find the clearance a little tight. You can get the rollers to sit lower, but then you risk the board's top edge hitting the feeder's frame, which can cause chatter or uneven feeding. So, if you're a cabinet maker who often slices 1 inch stock for doors, you might need to look at a feeder with a taller roller lift. The rotation of the rollers is another practical point. Because the rollers are mounted on a single axle, they all turn together, which means the feeder pushes the workpiece in a straight line without any wobble. In my tests, the board stayed square on the saw fence even when I pushed it at the higher speed setting. That steadiness is a big win over older, belt-driven feeders where each roller can drift slightly, especially if the belt stretches over time. The downside is that the single-axis design doesn't allow for independent roller height adjustment, so you can't fine-tune the grip on uneven boards. If you frequently work with warped or bowed lumber, you might have to spend a few extra seconds aligning the board before you feed it. One of the hidden trade-offs that shows up after you've got the feeder set up is how it integrates with your existing bench layout. The W1768 is a fairly compact unit about the size of a small filing cabinet, but it sits on a set of cast iron wheels that roll across the shop floor. Those wheels are great if you need to move the feeder from one station to another, but they also mean the feeder can be a little hard to lock down on a slick concrete floor. I found that adding a few rubber pads under the wheels does the trick, but that's an extra step most buyers don't think about until the feeder starts sliding during a long cut. If you have a rubberized mat already under your table saw, you're fine. If you work on bare concrete, plan on a small anti-slide solution. Who should consider buying this feeder? If you're a hobbyist who spends a few hours a week on a table saw, especially on sheet goods or light lumber, the W1768 offers a solid blend of power, speed control, and a reasonable footprint. It's also a good fit for a starter professional shop that needs a reliable feeder without breaking the bank. The motor's 1 horsepower rating is sufficient for most DIY projects, and the 3-speed dial gives enough